It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video. I'm going to do another app this week that you can self-host either on a VPS or on your own home server, just depending on how you want to set it up. And it's a really cool application. I think you're really going to enjoy this. So if you enjoy this video, let me just put it in now. Like, subscribe, share these things with your friends. It helps me grow the channel. It helps support what I'm doing. And I really appreciate everybody who's already subscribed. And I appreciate the patrons over at Patreon as well. Thank you so much. It means a lot. So I want to move into this pretty quickly and just go through it, but I do want to give you the detail you need in order to get this set up and installed yourself. So I was looking for some analytics, and you'll see real big on the screen here, Google Analytics. It's an alternative to Google Analytics. I hate this word alternative because a lot of people take that to mean like not quite as good as. And that's rarely the case, actually, when you talk about open source software. There's open source software out there that's better than proprietary paid-for software in a lot of cases. So I prefer the word option a lot of times versus alternative, but you know, these guys put alternative on their screen, that's okay. This is Matomo. Now, maybe it's maybe I'm saying it wrong. You know, maybe it's pronounced with a different kind of accent, I don't know, but Matomo, however you want to call it. And it's an analytics platform for grabbing analytics for page visits and things like that to your websites. So I've been doing the Shownotes site for a couple of months now. I try to remember each time that I do it. I don't always, but if I don't, you know, remind me, and I'll try to put the show notes out there on the Shownotes website. But I was wondering, like, how much traffic am I actually getting to that site? You know, how much is it being used? Is it worth it for me to continue that effort? Which it seems like it is. I've only been running this for a couple of days, so when I show you my dashboard, it's only a couple of days worth of data. And I'm sure I get a few more hits on days where I actually release videos versus days where it's kind of been a few days since I've done that. But I was looking for something that wasn't Google Analytics and wasn't a proprietary paid-for kind of application. Now, understand, almost all of the open source software that I show you guys, you can run it yourself for free. You can go to the effort to install it. You can go to the effort to maintain it. You can go to the effort to have a VPS for it or run it on your own system at home. That's the great thing about it, is it's open source, so you can do it for free, as in like free money, no cost, kind of free, other than the cost of the server, the VPS, or wherever you're running it, and then your time. But if you don't want to do that, you can support these open source projects by using their hosted offerings. So almost all of them have some kind of hosted or you know, offering that you can pay for. Sometimes it's a community edition versus a enterprise edition or professional edition, and you say, you know, community edition is cool, but I just want something that's ready to go and I don't have to install all the plugins myself. You can do that with their paid edition. So just like those, Matomo has a paid version, so we can go to the pricing page here and you can kind of see what it entails. So it's $19, $29, and then you can contact them if you need enterprise. But you know, for business, it's $29, and here's the specifications. And I'll link this page on the site. I'll link this page in the show notes and the description so that you can get this information yourself. And then the essentials is $19 a month if you want to do that. So for $20 a month, depending on the type of VPS you get and how much traffic you're getting to your site, this could totally be worth it. And in doing this, you're supporting this project and you're supporting it being open source, which I think is absolutely great. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you're doing this, especially for a professional in the IT world or somebody who needs to set these types of things up for companies or for other people. You know, keep in mind that there are paid options and that you can absolutely use those paid options, and it helps support the project. So please keep that in the back of your heads. So I was just looking for basic analytics. I just wanted to know how many people are coming to the site. I didn't really need something super expansive, but you know, as I was looking for something that was open source, I came across this. It looked really good. Now this used to have a different name. It was P-I-W-I-K. I don't know how you say that. Pewik. I don't know, but it's changed names and it's, you know, got a little bit of an update and stuff like that. So just be aware if you're using P-I-W-I-K, however you say that. Matomo is just the follower of that software, so you may already have it and you just don't realize it. But basically, I just want to go through first, what does it look like? But I'm going to use Docker to install it. Now you don't have to use Docker. They have installation instructions that just tell you what all you need, and you can install it bare bones onto your server and run it that way. I like Docker. Docker makes things really easy to run, and this is a super lightweight application. It just doesn't take any resources at all. So that's the reason that I'm running it with Docker. But I do want to show you the Docker version and give you a couple of things that might be a couple of gotchas with Docker whenever you get into it. So first I want to show you what I have set up. So this is set up on my home server. This is just looking at my shownotes.opensourceisawesome.com and basically just looking at how many visitors I have. So here you see I have 5 in the last 24 hours, and in the last half hour I've had none. I don't get a ton of visitors, but I get a few. And then as time goes by, you can kind of come over here and see this chart, and it tells you kind of how many visitors you've had. And this is doing a daily type thing, but you can click on these options down here at the bottom to change things about these charts as well. So if you say I want to see it by week, it'll change the way that it shows you how things are working. So in this week, I've had 11 visitors, not 5. If I look at it from daily, then it looks a little different. If I look at it by month, that's not really going to change. It's still only going to be 11 visitors because this is from when I set it up 2 days ago, maybe. Yeah, so I don't expect to have tons of visitors to the page, but if it helps a few people, then it's great, and it's totally worth it for me to keep it up and running. So that's cool. And then you can look at it by year if you want to as well. So depending on how long you've been running this and you're looking at your data, this thing will go out and grab that information and start charting it for you based on those changes. Right now, for me, day makes totally the most sense because I've only been running it for a few days. And then also, on the map, you can see where are the people that are visiting your sites and your pages, which is, I think, really, really cool. And these cards you can delete if you don't like the cards, so you can move them around, you can change them. So there's a lot of features and functionality built into the system that you don't realize right off the bat, but this really is kind of how the dashboard came right out of the gate. I think it had one little card down here at the bottom that was intro video, and I just deleted it. I just removed it from here. But up here you've got options where you can set dates and times and time frames for it to look at, so you've got a lot of really cool capability. So here, when we click on this, you can start to see all the websites that I'm tracking. So not only can you track your website, but you can track multiple websites, and you can see the data for those individually in the dashboard. You can set up different dashboards for those things, so that's really cool too. Now I run a lot of servers with a lot of things, but most of them aren't websites. Most of them are just servers that I'm running for applications, things like that. They don't technically have visitors. Now maybe it could be useful to have some data in here for those things, but in this case, I just want to know like how many visitors am I getting to this site to see if it's worth it for me to keep it up and running. So just know that you can see all the websites that you're tracking as well. And then of course we get over into the settings for this thing. So there are lots of settings. There's a lot of settings here in the user interface that you can go through and kind of figure out what's going on, but it does a system check when you first set up the system and install it, and I'll show you that here in a minute when we do the install. The install is very quick and pretty painless. You will need a MySQL or a MariaDB server set up so that it can actually use that and put data into it, because that's where it's storing this data as it's collecting it. The one thing that I really like is when I set it up and ran through the wizard, it also had a checkbox that said, do you want to help support people who said don't track me? And it's checked by default. I left it checked. And then it's got a couple of options there about not tracking people who don't want to be tracked. And I'm totally into your privacy, and if you don't want to be tracked, that's fine. I'm really not trying to track you to know every place you went on the internet. I just want to know, did you come to the site or not? I'm just looking for a counter, a hit counter that's not, hopefully it can tell what are bots, and hopefully it can tell what are search engine crawlers and things like that. And it gives me unique visitors, which is what I'm looking for. So if I get one visitor and they go to, all 6 of my posts, then it looks like 6 hits if you don't have the right thing to kind of break that down. So this does that for me. That's a very quick rundown of the settings in Matomo. I think it's something that you really, really need to get in there and just kind of look at yourself and see what the settings and everything look like. So here it gives you a little breakdown of your operating system versions, Windows, Mac. Over on the right it gives you browser breakdown, and then you can see the browser engines here in a chart. And just, again, lots and lots of information about the visitors that come through. This is Matomo. It's got a ton of information behind it that it's using to do some analytics and things. It's really not that I've seen collected anything that was private to me that I was worried about anybody seeing. It's really great. It's got a ton of settings, it's got a ton of features. I've shown you kind of what it looks like. Now I want to get into the installation of it, so let's get started with that. Now I looked at the installation instructions for just doing it straight up on the server, and as I kept looking I thought, man, this would be a great thing to run in Docker, and I went out and searched, and by gosh, here it is. So there's a Docker reference here for you to go and install it using Docker. Now they give you some pretty standard, pretty basic stuff. I'm going to zoom this up for you a little bit, and for me as well. So Docker run -d --links MySQL database. Now here they're assuming that you have a MySQL database running in Docker already somewhere, and that you understand how to create a network in Docker and link these two together through that Docker network. In my case, I'm running a MySQL database on the actual raw server, you know, the bare metal as they say, and I wanted to connect to that. So I took a little bit out and I kind of replaced it. But if you want to persist data, they tell you, you know, create a volume. So here's how you do that, and then do the same thing. So I'm going to make a slight, make a couple of changes to this command here, and then we're going to get this thing installed. So I'm going to go over to my terminal. I'm going to bring this up, and I'm going to go to my main host out there on SSDNodes. First, we want to get MySQL and MariaDB set up and installed on that server. So I want to run through that with you guys and kind of show you the steps. In the most recent versions of MariaDB, they've kind of changed the way the password setups work and everything like that. And as a non-root user, I want to show you kind of how you tackle that. Alright, so first thing we want to do is actually install the MariaDB server. And when you're on Ubuntu, if you're starting up a new server, then you want to do the apt update, apt upgrade stuff. I'm going to do the apt update real quick. So I'm going to let that run real quick, and then we're going to install MariaDB. Alright, we've got our system updated. Now we're going to install MariaDB. We do sudo apt install MariaDB-server, and then we'll put -y so it won't ask us. Alright, MariaDB is installed, and now we need to do a few things to kind of actually get it ready for us to use. So we're going to do sudo mysql-u root. Well, in fact, let me show you what happens if you don't. If you just do mysql-u root-p, you're going to put in this password. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to give me an access denied. But there is no password set up yet because you didn't set one up during the install. So what you have to do is sudo mysql-u root-p. It's going to ask you again for the password. And this time when I hit enter, it just goes right in. This is what we're looking for. Now, I'm going to drag this window up just a little bit on the recording, so if it gets a little low, you can still see what I'm typing. But we're going to say use MySQL and hit semicolon. And it's going to tell you the database changed right here, and now you'll see. So here it said none, now you see MySQL. This is something that we want. Now we need to query, so we're going to run a quick query here, and we're going to see what the user looks like and the host and the plugins. So we're going to say select user host plugin from, and I believe that's users.mysql, and we're going to hit semicolon. Let me see if I type this right. From mysql.user plugin. There we go. Okay, so here's the correct SQL query. If I can learn how to type it, anybody can. So select, and then user with a capital U, comma, host with a capital H, comma, plugin, and then from MySQL, mysql.user, and then semicolon. And when you run that, you're going to see you only have root, localhost as the host, and here's the Unix socket plugin. So what we need to do is add ourselves as a user with a password, and then we need to also make sure that we can log in locally, and if you want to log in remotely, you need to set that up as well, so I'll show you how to do that. Alright, so we're going to do create user, and then in a single quote, you're going to put in the username you want, and then single quote, @, and then single quote again, localhost, single quote, and then you're going to put identified by, and this is basically saying what's the password going to be, and then put in the password that you want to use. So I'm going to put in a password, and you guys will all see it, but don't worry, I'm going to get rid of this after we're done. So you're going to use a semicolon. So just to go through this command again, create user, and then inside single quotes your username, then the @ symbol, then inside single quotes localhost, identified by, and then inside single quotes whatever password you want for that user, then a semicolon. It should come back and tell you query OK, 0 rows affected. But if you rerun that query we did a while ago, so you can just use the up arrow key just like we do in the normal terminal, you'll now see that here's Brian on localhost and there's no plugin for the actual password that I'm using. Now we're going to do one more for a remote user. So we're going to do a very similar command. So you can use the up arrow key, and you're just going to go back and you're going to take out localhost, and this time you're going to put in %. That's the wildcard symbol for MySQL, and that means basically from anywhere in this case. Now you could put specifically an IP address if you know you're going to be connecting from a certain IP address. That kind of binds it to your IP address, so if other people try to hit it, they can't. And then you want to change it and use a different password probably, so you're not using the same password for both accounts. So we'll use something like that, and then hit enter. And again, you should get query OK, 0 rows affected. Finally, we need to grant our users permissions to do the things that we want to do. So if you want to check that you've got the right users, run this query again, and you should see your user at localhost and your user at %. Okay. So now we're going to say grant all privileges on, and then we're going to say localhost in single quotes. Grant all privileges on *** to, and then your user at localhost with a semicolon. So again, you're going to put your user inside of single quotes, then the @ sign, then localhost inside of single quotes. Press enter, and you should get query OK, 0 rows affected. Now we're going to do the same command, but for your user with %. Same thing. Okay, so now we've got those privileges. Now we're going to put flush privileges, and again it should give you query OK, 0 was affected. So that just kind of resets all of the permissions and makes sure that it has the updated permissions you just gave yourself. Now we're going to update it to use the plugin that we want for the password, which is the MySQL native password. So we're going to say update user set plugin MySQL native password, where user with a capital U equals your user. And in this case, if you give yourself the same username twice, you can just do this one time and it will work. Okay, I'm missing an equal sign, so we got to go back here. We're going to do equal. So it should be update user with a small u, set plugin equals, and then single quotes again, MySQL underscore native underscore password, where user with a capital U equals your username inside of single quotes and then semicolon. Press enter, and in this case you see query OK, 2 rows affected. So it said rows matched to, changed to, and there was 0 warning, so that's a good sign. Now we can go back and we can check our query again and see what everything looks like, and you can see here that it says that it's using the MySQL native password plugin, which is what we want, so that's great. Alright, so we're going to modify a file that's inside of our server. So if you're using a Ubuntu based system, then this is where it's going to be. Now if you're using Fedora, if you're using CentOS, or if you're using another system, you'll have to find out where this file is at, but we want to modify this file, and so we're going to use sudo and then nano, and it's going to be /etc/mysql/my.cnf, and then we need to put in our super user password here, and we can just scroll down inside of this file. So when we get to the bottom, we're going to put in bind-address equal 0.0.0.0. Make sure we have a line underneath, hit Control O to save, Control X to exit, and now we need to restart MySQL. So we're going to do sudo systemctl restart MySQL, and sudo systemctl restart MariaDB. So we've set up MariaDB, or if you installed MySQL, you've set up MySQL, hopefully with all of the settings that we need. If you followed along with me, you should be set to have a user that can connect through localhost. So what we're going to do is say quit, and we'll be back at our regular terminal, and then we're going to say now MySQL-u Brian-p, and since I'm doing this from local, I need to use my local password, and I'm in. So there we go. Alright, so we've got MySQL MariaDB set up and installed, which is great. And we've got a user that has the privileges that we need, which is great. So now we need to go back to our instructions for installing the actual Matomo into our Docker. Now if you don't have Docker installed, I've got other videos that show you how to install Docker. You should install Docker-CE, which is Community Edition. Just Google it. Install Docker CE. It's not hard to do. But I've already got Docker installed in this case. So I'm going to grab this command and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to my terminal. I'm going to paste it in. But I'm going to change it a little bit here. So I'm not going to use a database that's actually running in Docker in this case. So I'm going to take out the link and the part about MySQL. I want to keep run-d. I'm going to put -p and I'm going to point a different port to port 80, which is where this wants to run inside of Docker. So I'm going to say 10.0.0.80, and I'm going to put a :80. The next one I'm going to do is my SSL port, which is going to be 10.0.443:443. The volume I'm going to leave like they have, which is Matomo, and then it's going to be /var/www/html. And then right here before the end, I'm going to put --name equals MATAMO space, and then the final MATAMO. So this is what your command should look like. I think I've got too many spaces right here, so let me take one out. There we go. Docker run -d, which means run it as a daemon in the background so that after I quit out of the terminal, it continues to run. -p for the port number. 10080:80. Now you can pick any port number instead of 10080 that you're not already using. And then -p 10.443, and again pick any port number you want other than 10.443 if you're already using 10.443, just pick one you're not using. And then volume Matomo, and then :var/www/html space --name equals Matomo, so we can find it in our list, and then finally the name of the actual Docker container that we want to pull down, the Docker image, which is Matomo. I'm going to hit enter and let that thing run. Alright, so now we can actually look and see if we have it running, so we can do docker ps and then pipe grep matamo. There it is. So it says that it's been up for 9 seconds, it's running, it's got the ports forwarded that we would expect, and here's the name, so that's good. Let's clear that out. So now we're going to go back and we're going to go to our site. This is kind of a shortcut for me. Alright, so here's our entry page into Matomo, but I don't have this forcing it to go to SSL. Now I do have this set up because this is just kind of my server name, my server host name, but that may not be what I actually want to call it or what I want to use. I might want to have some other domain that I'm using for it. So I might want to give it like analytics.forceterminate.com and have that not even have to put the port number on it. So if you want to do that, that's where NginX-Proxy-Manager comes in, and you would want to set it up that way. So that'll be the next thing that we're going to do, is we're going to go set up a URL for this, and then we'll get NginX-Proxy-Manager to kind of handle the ports and all the forwarding and things like that, and then we'll run through the setup. Alright, here we are. I've got NginX-Proxy-Manager open, and I've gone and set up the URL to be analytics.forceterminate.com. So we want to add a host that matches that and can put us into the right place. So I'm going to click on hosts, and then I'm going to click on add host. I'm going to give it the name for the URL. And then I'm going to hit enter so that it saves it. Alright, then we're going to move here. We're going to put in the IP address of the server and the port number that it's running on for the public. Now from here I can just hit save. We'll have that in the list now. We should be able to look at it and see. So let's just test it and see if it goes forward like we expect. Yeah, okay, perfect. So we're getting that. Great. Now let's go back and we'll just edit this thing. We're going to go to this one. We're going to add a location. Yeah, we need to add a location because of the port number. So in this case, I'm using a port that's not 443, so I need to add this location. So we're just going to say again, analytics.forceterminate.com. And then we're going to change this to HTTPS. We're going to put in the IP address again, and we did 10443. And then we're going to go to the SSL tab, and we're going to tell it we want a new SSL certificate. We're going to agree to the terms and conditions, make sure our email is on, and then we're going to set force SSL. We're going to hit save, and we're just going to be patient for a second because it goes out and it hits let's encrypt, and it says here's all the stuff that you need, and it runs through the challenges, make sure they can find it, and then it updates. So now if I click here, there we go, and it forced us to SSL, which is what we want, so that's great. So it says in case you're using an ad blocker, please disable it, which I am using an ad blocker, but that's okay. We're at the welcome screen, which is what we're looking for, and now we've got the little wizard where we can run through and actually get things set up on Matomo. Now that we've got Matomo installed and ready to go, we have to kind of go through the setup wizard. So we're going to click here on next. And it's going to do kind of a self-check. So you want to go through this list and make sure you don't see any major like, hey, this thing is missing. So right here we've got everything set up and good. One of the things is you'll see is if you don't have SSL set up and force SSL, it'll tell you that down here. So make sure you've got that all set up before you kind of start walking through this. We're just going to click next. So now it wants to know about the database. This is where we have to give it our database information. Now because we set this up, and depending on where you run this, if you're running this in a VPS like I am, you may not have a private IP address on the VPS that you can access within that network. It's just the public IP address. So you got to be a little careful because we're running. Remember, in this case, I've set up MySQL on the bare metal, but we're running this tool in Docker. So if I say localhost, the Docker container is going to think that it's inside the container of localhost. So we can't use that, which is what 127.0.0.1 is. And I can show you if you're curious. So database server, we're going to do login. So remember, this is Brian, and I'll use my local password since that's where we're saying we're accessing it from. And then the database name. So in this part, you can kind of give it whatever you want. Up here, you've got to give it credentials that exist and a database server, of course, that is already set up. But here you can say whatever you want your database name to be. So Matomo makes total sense. And then it's going to prefix the table with that. And then you have to tell it what kind of driver you want it to use. So we'll just leave it on PDO and MySQL. We'll hit next, and it tried, and you see it says, hey, I can't connect to this database because it's not on that localhost server. So we've got to use the actual server IP address in my case that we know it to be running on. And then again, I've got to change this now because I gave myself a different password for the non-localhost user. And we'll try this again. There we go. Now it worked. So it's creating the tables, it's doing all the things that we expected, and we're moving forward with our progress, which is great. We're going to click on next. We've got to create our super user here, so I'll put in a username, and then I'll put in a strong password here. Now you can use, of course, your password manager, and you should, but in this case I'm just going to do this real quick because we're going to be rid of it afterwards. And then an email address. And then down here you can say email me with Matomo updates and send the information for professional services and products for Matomo. So if you want those things, feel free to check them. I'm just going to leave them blank in this case. So now we have our website name. So what website do I want to check with my Matomo stuff? So we want to set up a website in this case that we want to actually get analytics on. Now you have to be able to access a certain portion of the HTML code, which is the head section of your website or the head section of pages that you want to track information on individually. So understand that as well. You can do this in WordPress, you can do this in all kinds of systems. You just have to understand and learn how to do that. And I can't tell you possibly how to do it for every possible thing out there that you might want to track. But in my case, let's just use my Ghost blog that I have set up already. We're doing that for Shownotes anyways, so we're just gonna put it in for Shownotes. So I'm gonna do shownotes.opensourceisawesome.com. And then we're going to do the same thing. Now in my case it's HTTPS, so make sure you check that. Check your spelling. We're going to move down and it's going to be website time zone, so you just want to set this up. For me it's way down here under U for US, so I've got to really scroll. Let me get down here to the U's. UTC? No, you could also say UTC, I guess. I believe I'm UTC -6 right there, and it's a non-e-commerce site. So if you have it as an e-commerce site, you might want to enable this just because it probably does some statistics differently. Mine's not e-commerce, so I'm going to click next, and then here it's going to give us the code that we need to put into that system. So you just basically take this, copy all of it, including these start and end tags here. You're going to just copy that, and then you're going to go to your site. So in my case, I'm going to go to shownotes.opensourceisawesome.com right here, except I don't want to go to the entire post. Just want to go to the main site and then /ghost, because that's going to give me my, oops, oh, I went to the wrong thing. There we go. This will bring me to the login. I think I'm already logged in. Yeah. So here, when it's in Ghost, they kind of set this up nicely, and they have a nice little section that says code injection, which makes it really easy. And right here, you can see my current code that's already tracking something. So I'm just going to make a little space underneath this one, and I'm going to hit that, and I'm putting this into the head section, the site header section. Now they have site footer stuff too, that's where that other stuff would go inside of Matomo, so we may come back and add that in a minute. But now that I've added that, I'm going to save my changes, and it's done. So now we can go back to our Matomo site here, and it tells you log analytics, mobile apps, SDKs. It gives you a bunch of information, and we're going to hit next. Congratulations, everything's set up. And then now this is the part that I like right here. See, enable do not track support. It's checked by default. You can uncheck it, but I like to leave it checked. That's just really cool to leave that checked, so please don't uncheck that. Same thing, anonymize the information. It's already checked, so just leave it checked if you would, please. We're going to click on that final button there, let it all get set up, and it's going to bring us to login. And then you can say remember me if you want it to kind of remember your credentials, of course. So right here, no data has been recorded yet. It's going to tell you this until you actually get data onto the site, and it gets tracked by that tracking code, and they're going to give you the code just in case you forgot to go put it, or if you needed to kind of move forward and then you need to go back and put it, you can always come back and get this code again. So there's a whole lot of stuff, and you can customize the tracking and all kinds of things. But once you get in here, so you can just click on dashboard if you want to see the dashboard. It's going to kind of tell you this again. There's still no data. Yeah, I don't think it's going to pick up on me doing this. I've got my tracking blocking going. Let's see. Let's turn this off. Here we go. All right, so I've created some traffic on my site. So now you can see that I've had a visit, and it's been 8 actions on the site. And then of course, here's the little thing I told you. We've got a little video. You can go up here and you can close these. You can make them full screen. You can refresh, things like that. You can minimize to get them out of the way. So if I minimize this, yeah, it just makes it small, which is fine. There we go. Gets things out of the way. Here we can see kind of information detail. And then it's the same dashboard you've already seen. I haven't really gone through to customize the dashboards or anything yet, but now we've got a little traffic going, so that's good. Now let's go to settings. So I'm going to put in this opt-out code here on that site briefly and see what it looks like. So I'm going to put, I'm just going to copy this code and I'm going to go back here, and in this case I'm going to put it in the footer, and I'm going to save that. And now we'll go back to the site here and we'll click on it. And let's see if it shows me anything in my footer. Yeah, here you go. So you may choose to prevent this website from, aggregating and analyzing data, and you are not opted out. Uncheck the box to opt out. So I'll uncheck the box. It's going to put a cookie on my machine, and now it's not going to track my clicks or anything else anymore. So as I click, it should not be adding actions over time. So let's just click around. I think I had 8 actions. It may be 9 because I came in here to click the little checkbox. But let's click a few things and see if it detects what I'm doing. And we'll click on this image here. It's not going to do anything. And then we'll go back one more time. And we'll click on about. And then we'll click on, we'll scroll it and then go back up. And here we go. Click on remotely. And then we'll click on it again. And then now let's go see if we see a difference in what Matomo's tracking. And yeah, so the 10 just to get into the site and actually like click into the site and get down to the footer, and that is it. And then so it stopped tracking. So that's kind of nice to put an opt-out there for your users in case they don't want to be tracked. I think that's really cool. Again, I love the privacy settings. I love everything around Matomo. I think it's a really great piece of software. It was super easy to get set up. I know I went through a lot with the MySQL install for you guys, but since I already had it installed, it was just really, really easy to get Matomo set up in a Docker and then point it to the MySQL database and just let it do its thing. When it runs through the wizard, it creates the tables, it creates everything that you need, and then it's just running. You go in and set up a little bit of code on the sites you want to track and let it run. So if you've been looking for some really great software to do site tracking like this, that's got some privacy in mind, that's not Google, that's not proprietary, but that's open source, that's self-hosted, I think this is a really great solution. There's probably a ton of other ones out there, but I found this one and it was so simple. I wanted to share it with you. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you got a lot out of it. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about this channel, and I'll talk to you next time.